All right, we're going to start integrating a framework, a CSS HTML framework, into our code now. So we're going to use Bootstrap. So first of all, how do we get it loaded? You're going to see me sometimes looking over here. I actually have like I pre-made this lesson, obviously. So I have some code to the side I'm sometimes going to drag over, or I'll try to take it from Bootstrap, but just in case you see me looking around, that's what I'm looking at. So how do we get Bootstrap, first of all, just like loaded in here? Like, how are we going to use this? Well, if we go to Bootstrap, let's close some of this other stuff, blah, 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 and we come up to the docs and it says introduction. Okay, so we want to load Bootstrap. Right up here in the introduction, it has include the CSS and JavaScript. So there is here this big long thing that looks like what we did here in our code when we linked our own CSS. So if we just grab this is loading it from we don't have to load it like from a local file. It's loading it from some place on the internet where that file is stored, but they've let anybody load it from there. So we're just going to paste that right in there. Boom, there, it's loaded in. We have this Bootstrap CSS loaded. It already kind of changed the page a little. We're going to be looking at this mainly in a new window. We can see it already changed like some of the fonts and stuff, and kind of now the margins are kind of a little bit wacky. So anyway, we're going to keep going. There's also some JavaScript that it tells us to load, and it tells us to load that, again, the similar way to what we've already seen with our JavaScript. We're going to put it above the JavaScript. Now, we do put it above our own scripts. So if we have the Bootstrap, and then we have our own script. And for CSS, we have the Bootstrap first, and then our own script. And that way, if we write some CSS that overwrites the Bootstrap, like if we want to change, say, the color of the primary button to be a different color rather than that bluish color that it has, our style CSS will overwrite what's already written in the Bootstrap CSS. So that's why we load it first. So, okay, we've loaded it in. Now, like, we can just kind of go to Bootstrap and be like, what are some stuff we can add? So actually, before we do that, we're just going to look really quick at this Bootstrap CSS and see what it looks like, because, we've written some CSS and holy smokes, what's going on here? Well, this is what we call minified CSS. So it's really hard to read. It's basically making the file as small as possible. So it gets rid of all the spaces and all the comments, and everything is really tiny. Holy smokes, this is impossible. Luckily, you can still inspect things using our little dev tools, and it will kind of like break that out into pieces. So as we inspect, we can see probably here that there's some styles that are being applied from the main Bootstrap CSS. We don't need to really go into it, but just so you know that whole minified thing, and you can still inspect to see what's going on. Okay, so we can kind of just like start dumping stuff from Bootstrap in. So let's go over and let's look at some of the stuff they have. Let's look at navbar. That's always a fun thing. So down here with the navbar, they have this like example navbar here, has tons and tons of stuff in it. So why don't we just try like copying this whole HTML, and we'll just drop it in. We'll put it right at the top here, just paste, and make this aligned nicely. Okay, save that and see what happens. Let's load this. Cool, we have this exact same navbar up here. It's slightly different. Theirs is darker colored, but ours is light colored, and there it does mention that like, oh, a light themed navbar. So there's like theming that we can do to change the color of this, all kinds of crazy stuff. But okay, we have like a basic layout. There's something kind of messed up here. Now that's because our own CSS is overwriting the default Bootstrap CSS. So maybe we can comment out. We'll comment out, and fun for you, there's a different way to comment out HTML versus commenting out CSS. It's just done this different way. It's not a huge deal. But anyway, we reload that, and now you can see all our buttons are screwy, but this is properly done. So our CSS was actually overwriting some of the default Bootstrap CSS. Okay, so we have like a basic nav bar. We can probably pull out some of the elements. We don't need all this stuff, and we don't need the search bar or any of that kind of stuff. So we can go in here and be like, okay, where is that? We don't need the link. We maybe want one link to like an about page. We can take out the rest of these links. We can take out this disabled link, and we can take out all the stuff that's form. This is also a really good way for you to get to learn more HTML. You'll see what Bootstrap does. They use this UL and LI stuff. I'm not going to go over that in detail here. It'll just get confusing. But this is a really great way for you to start to get to see more HTML and get to use it and give it a shot and get to used to it. So, okay, we reload that. We could change that one that says link to something that says about instead, just for the heck of it. And reload. Okay, we have a nav bar, and we're going to call that, instead of having Mapster calculator down here, we're going to move it up to be up here. So we can get rid of that heading because now it's taken care of. And now it says Mapster calculator, home, about. Okay, it's kind of looking nice. Now we can go look at something like, how about we go next at making this little area? Well, some of this comes from just knowing Bootstrap and me having used it for a long time. But what we're looking for is a container. There's a container element that can kind of put things into a nice little space so it's not stuck to the edge of the page like this. So we have this thing that we've called parent container, but if we just call it container, that's the Bootstrap name, which we can see right here, div class container. And if I reload, now it's kind of like got a bit of spacing. It could probably be nicer, we could change it around, but we'll go with this for now. So, okay, we have this thing called container, that's nice. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to try changing the input area here to look a little bit nicer. So if we so for that, we have to go down. This is part of something that's called a form. Inputs, checkboxes, these sorts of things are included in forms in HTML. So that's where it is under the Bootstrap documentation. I don't want to get too, again, stuck in all this type of stuff. I just want to kind of give you an idea where to go. And as you get familiar with this kind of way that HTML gets classified, you'll find it easier and easier to navigate these documentation. Okay, so if we come in here to this overview of forms, we see there's all kinds of stuff going on. It's a little bit confusing. You could read through this and get to know it and see how there's different examples of how to use different forms. Now, I know where we're going, so we're going to go to find basically something like an email address here and see what it has for the class that we add, because we don't need to drag this whole thing in. We could just drag this whole thing in, but really what we're looking for is the class. We know, because we've done a little bit with CSS, that the class and the ID are what connect together the HTML and the CSS. So let's just try changing the class here. So we'll go to our little input. We see it already has an ID. We don't need to change that because we're just adding a class called form control. Okay, we're going to save that, reload, and now it's like this big thing, and it's totally it's got a different layout. Everything's kind of different here. Okay, that's cool, but it's a little too wide. So we'd have to go then and look around and figure out how columns work, which we're going to dive into a bit more in the next video. But for now, let's just kind of keep going over some basics. Let's change some buttons. So buttons, we already looked a bit at. They're down here. And there's this button type, button class equals button. There's all kinds of repetitive stuff going on. So we're going to copy some of this type button stuff. It's not actually terribly important. But so now if we just add this stuff to our button here and save it, we're going to see that just one button is kind of different, and it's like there's nothing really happening with it, and that's because it says it's the base class. So it's nothing, it's transparent border and background color. So in itself, it's nothing. But maybe let's make it the secondary. I always kind of like the secondary one when we have a ton of buttons together like this. So what do? We put two classes together. Class, you can have more than one at once here. You can have button and button secondary. They're just separated by a space. Cool. So now we reload that. Cool. We have this like gray button. Now we can make that we can put this stuff onto all of our buttons. We can go, okay, let's copy this down into all of them. And then we get a consistent style across them all. Okay, we save that. Reload. Oh, cool. Our buttons are looking different. Now we can choose slightly different ones for the plus. Maybe for all the plus stuff, we'll have it be, I don't know, these info buttons. Let's do that. So we can copy over some of what we did already for the operations. Okay, so operations buttons, and we change this to info, and we can copy and paste that in here. Save that, reload. Cool, they're all this color, and then let's make one of them green and one of them red. We'll make the equals red and the we'll make the equals green and the clear red. So we go over, and this one's called danger is red, So that's the clear, and success is green. Okay, so we'll reload this. Cool, our buttons are all looking different. Our page is looking different now. Pretty cool. So in the next video, we're going to go over like how to split this up into some columns, do a little bit more spacing, a little bit more making this look nice. And then we'll come back and start doing some more on this. But you can see already this takes us a lot farther than having to write it all ourselves. So see you in the next video.